Depressing downfall of Joe Rogan, courtesy of Ghost Gum. Big up Ghost Gum.
In the comedy mecca of Austin, Texas, Prophet Joe Rogan has created his own Kaaba, the comedy mothership, casting out all other Austin comedians to different cities and converting all remaining to the monotheistic religion of stand-up with Joe Rogan as its prophet.
Cheeseburgers.
Those seeking to gain his approval and become loyal followers make the pilgrimage from all across the country to bask in its free speech glory. They sing his praises, tell him of his greatness, and jump at the chance to join his inner circle, not caring if they make fools of themselves. All are desperately following for the slim chance they make it to the ever-elusive Joe Rogan podcast. And if they're really lucky, the comedy mothership green room.
He took it to the point where you can't get in there unless you got a code. There's no just walking in. You're not going to walk in.
But what if I told you that all of this was a castle built on sand, and with each passing day, the cracks begin to show in the foundation? There are two essential tenets that went into the building of this comedy empire, and both are beginning to fall. The first one, of course, being stand-up comedy. Naturally, you can't have a comedy club without stand-up comedy. Joe Rogan, the prophet of comedy, has described stand-up comedy as his ultimate passion, so let's dig into that. For somebody like myself, I am very skeptical of stand-up comedy, which is weird because I remember I used to love stand-up comedy, but as I make these videos, I'm starting to ask myself, was it ever good?
Yeah, see? It happens to everybody. You see? It happens to everybody. We consume too much. After watching Dave Chappelle's special, that was really fucking good. I think most people, we have to seek good comedy. We have to seek good art. I think because I watch too much bad shit, I think everything is terrible. It's not all terrible. There are some good comedians out there, but that's what happens. When you watch too much Rogan Sphere stuff, you start to wonder to yourself, is stand-up a scam? Is it all a grift? Is any of it good? Because all of those guys are terrible. Yeah, I get it. I fucking get it, Ghost Gum.
I've talked about so many bad comedians and watched so many awful stand-up sets.
Well, Fast and Furious's tagline is, never give up on family. Ours is similar. Never give up on the family of apps.
That I question, as a form of entertainment, is this even good? We've established that of Joe Rogan's LA comedian crew, almost none of them were funny. Bert Kreischer, Brendan Schaub, Joey Diaz, okay, maybe him. So when Joe Rogan brought his comedy pals out to Austin, he was able to handpick them and decide who he thought had the right stuff. Surely they're funny, right?
I bought the headlight. I go to my parking lot.
Jesus, look what he used to look like. Look what he used to look like, bro. I don't blame him for the style upgrade. Look what he used to look like. Oh my God. He looks like a fucking AI bot. He looks like a fucking humanoid robot, I swear to God. Look how he used to look. Fucking hell. That's a glow up, I think. Tony Hinchcliffe looks much better now. It's definitely a glow up. The dead eyes, the dead 5-yard stare, 10-yard stare, whatever's going on there. That fucking outfit. Oh my God, what the fuck's happening?
They're funny, right?
I bought the headlight. I go to my parking lot, their parking lot, and pop it in. Why would it be my parking lot, right? My parking lot is not in an auto zone.
These guys were Joe Rogan approved. The LA ones weren't as funny, but he basically had a clean slate in Austin. So you get people like the comedy mastermind, Tony Hinchcliffe.
A lot of people don't know this, but I study the Canadian healthcare system because they brag about how good it is. And I like to do my own research just to make sure that I live in the greatest country on planet Earth, and I do. I don't know if you guys know this, but Canada does suicides now for anybody that wants one. Am I correct?
No.
Who is so funny that his entire show revolves around the fact that he is not funny, so he has to bring on funnier comedians. A metrosexual, insecure narcissist is the savior of comedy, the man who nuked his own comedy special from the internet because it was so bad, a man who stole a joke from one of the most iconic comedians ever and put it in said special, allegedly.
Doesn't Shallow Grave seem a mite rash? Like, these serial killers are supposed to be so shrewd and cunning and everything, you know? At least according to the TV movies I've seen. But then when it comes time for the grave, they get a little hasty, you know? They're like, there you go, 3 twigs and a leaf. That ought to do it.
My favorite things to watch are like Forensic Files and First 48, those shows that really show you people that murdered somebody and they try to get away with it. I've watched enough of them to where I know how to get away with murder now. Because I know where everybody that gets caught always up. They always leave a hand sticking out of the dirt or some lazy shit like that. You gotta commit. You gotta get your shovel and dig.
Oh, naughty, Mr. Hinchcliffe. That sounded very, very similar. That sounded very similar.
Important part. You know what I never see on those crime shows? The body was discovered after being buried 75 feet deep in the ground.
The man who is somehow 41. The man who looks like an evil sidekick in a kid's movie. Surely not. Every single person who listens to Kill Tony agrees that Tony Hinchcliffe is the least funny part of Kill Tony. But what about the other comedians on Kill Tony, like Roastmaster David Lucas? This guy is funny, people say, and I agree, especially when he got mocked.
Hey yo, sorry, blow my nose there. What the fuck happened to David Lucas? What the fuck happened to David Lucas, by the way? I haven't heard or seen of him in a while. What the fuck happened to David Lucas? He just disappeared, innit?
And humiliated by a 17-year-old. I also like how his entire joke repertoire is basically this.
Oh, he had a three skin tone, chicken bone, leave me alone with it. Oh, coming back. He's coming back. Super knuckle, Bill Buckle, banana truffle in it.
Or what about this guy, Jeff Dye, who fled his homeland of Los Angeles due to comedy oppression, arriving in Austin as a comedy refugee, telling Joe Rogan he's buying a house in Austin.
Are they really going to defund the police? Are they really going to, have
I am
struggle
buying a house
sessions?
here.
Are you? In Texas?
Yep.
Yeehaw!
Yeah, like about 30, 40 minutes from here.
Nice.
Yeah.
You already locked on it?
No, but I'm shopping for houses on Wednesday. Oh, tomorrow. Not Wednesday,
okay.
tomorrow.
Then started a GoFundMe so his fans could fund his move to Texas after tweeting in the past that GoFundMe should only be used in emergency situations. Then he deleted it because he got backlash.
Of course.
Also, if this guy looks familiar, it's because he's from this iconic clip.
People say Africa like it's a country. I do it too all the time.
Africa is a country.
That's a big continent. So like Egyptians are technically African.
Yeah, but it's like I'm American, but
I know.
Denver.
What I find interesting
Fucking
about most of these guys is they're not really comedians. They just like to talk. And this is the point.
Yeah, great point. Great fucking point. Great fucking point. Great fucking point. They're not comedians. They just like to yap. That's a good point.
It has come to. Rogan has so much influence that bad comedians are asking their fans to fund their move to Austin. Now Jeff has to face the prospect that keeps hopeful comedians up at night. Something that shakes them to their core. The idea that they might have to get a real job. These are the types of people that make up the Austin comedy scene. So we can conclude, with the exception of like two people, most of Rogan's inner sphere is not very funny. And I was under the impression that stand-up was supposed to be funny. Now I look at it and I have no idea what it was, let alone what it is. Although I will say the days of having a podcast and that being enough to sell out arenas are over. And all these
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very, very good point. That's a very, very good point. I guess if you're a comedian selling out arenas, you're probably selling out arenas because your comedy's really good. Right? You're not going to be a comedian selling out arenas if your comedy isn't good. Yeah, that's actually a good point. No one's selling out arenas off the strength of how good their comedy is anymore. How good their podcast is. That's a really good point.
Rogan guys are proof of that. Brian Callen, who was extradited and now is back in the Roganite sphere, recently complained about not being able to sell out theaters anymore. So the accused has put out a comedy special recently, recorded at the Comedy Mothership, and this is it. This is the pinnacle of Rogan sphere comedy right now. Bask in it. I want you to absorb this because it's not comedy. It's a TED Talk. This is not comedy. It's preaching.
That kid should have talked to me before he carried out that terrible assassination, that dum-dum. They got cameras that can recognize your gait. Your particular walk is up in the cloud. They can shoot a laser into your heart and pick up your heart signature. How about this?
It also gets you booked at the most popping comedy club in the country. This is not just regular stand-up. This is the pinnacle of stand-up with great jokes like this.
Poppy, I've seen the neighbors. They're pretty old. Let's play it safe. They're probably COVID conscious. Why don't you just go over and introduce yourself, right? I'll bake some Mexican cookies and you go over there. I'm like, what the fuck's a Mexican cookie? What are you talking about? It's like a chocolate chip with salsa all over it? What are you talking about?
Classic joke. That's a classic that's a Hall of Fame joke, mate. That's a Hall of Fame bit. That's a Hall of Fame bit.
It's ironic because Rogan and his buddies would argue that the reason stand-up sucks now is all the wokeness. You can't even make jokes anymore. Now, this might have been true back when comedians were getting slammed by mainstream media outlets like 10 years ago. But nowadays, I'd argue comedy is as open and as free speech friendly as it has been, especially with platforms like YouTube where you can kind of say whatever you want. Like, in a way, comedy should be in the best state it's ever been. You'd think these guys would be thriving and celebrating in this new comedy meta, but no, they're still complaining, and comedy is in an absolute fugue state because of it. So what is ruining comedy? Ironically, it's the man himself. Yes, Joe Rogan is ruining stand-up, not with just who he platforms, but he's also contributing to it. Joe Rogan is the most influential comedian in the world, no question about it. So why does he hang around guys that are just so unfunny? Well, there's two reasons. One is because he wants to hang out with people less funny than him to make himself look good, or he genuinely thinks these guys are funny because...
But the irony is, Rogan might be the worst comic out of his group. If you're being really fair and you were trying to give everyone a chance, I would definitely say I think Rogan might be the worst of the group. Especially when you add in his level of fame, experience. I think he might be the worst pound for pound of his group. He might be the worst comedian pound for pound in his group. On God.
Because that's his taste in comedy. So to answer this, we got to look at how good Joe's stand-up is. Ironically, all his stand-up is either completely forgotten or mocked. Ask yourself right now, have you ever heard a single person retell a Joe Rogan joke? Has your friend ever sent you a Joe Rogan joke on Instagram from one of his stand-up sets? Burn the Boats, his most recent special, is genuinely one of the worst comedy specials I have ever seen. I did a members video ranking the worst specials I've ever seen, and this one ranks pretty high, I'd say. Not the worst, but it's up there. I've heard the theory that Joe simply doesn't understand humor, in the same way I simply don't understand astrophysics. I could talk about it all I want, but I will simply not understand. Here's an example of what I mean.
Like she's like a big headdress, black lady, and I go, hey, watch that whip around the African, and I swear to God, the camera just went, doo, like the whole thing shut down. I felt like the power went out. And I was like, well, that was weird, and they fired me right after.
Obviously a joke about slavery. Now, what does comedy titan Joe Rogan say about this?
Wait a minute. If someone's wearing African garb, you can't say the African?
Clips like these are one in a million. Dudes have made entire compilations of Joe just blatantly missing jokes on his podcast. Like this Theo Von joke here where Joe responds with a, actually?
Did you know that that's where those powdered wigs came from? You know those powdered wigs that old dudes used to wear and the people in court used to wear? And
yeah.
That all came from a pair of rich, noble, where were they again? In France?
Wiggers, I think they called them.
No, wiggers are white people that wish they were black. It's a totally different thing.
Yeah. Joe constantly talks about
He's so serious too. He was so serious. No, actually, wiggers are he's making a joke, you idiot.
How comedians think so different to pedestrians like you and me because they can joke around with each other and riff. So watch the comedy master riff with his buddies right here.
How many authors are there?
Oh, I know.
There's a lot more.
Musicians?
How many musicians? How many doctors? How many
Actors?
lawyers?
Now, with all these clips, I think one could come to the conclusion that Joe really doesn't understand comedy or stand-up. I mean, look at the guys being pushed hard by Joe Rogan, even in the last few years. Even when he had a chance to reset in Austin, sure, he hit on a few, but he also had some wild swing and misses. And the beauty of every comedian having a podcast now is most people realize that these dudes are smarmy, unlikable assholes. People in the Rogan sphere presented themselves like heroes to the everyman, but were the farthest thing from it. Even good comedians like Bill Burr can't escape this. Remember when he went on a crusade against billionaires in the USA, but then shilled for Saudi billionaires because they paid him a lot of money? Then calling everyone racist who called him out, but they have a fucking cheesecake factory, you guys.
And I'm thinking like, is that a Starbucks? Next to a Pete's Coffee? Next to a Burger King?
Look at her. Look at the AI general. That's brilliant. Helicopter, look at the pay for itself. I love it.
Next to a McDonald's, next to a Pizza Hut, next to a Dunkin' Donuts, next to a Krispy Kreme, next to a Cheesecake Factory.
What's weird about this is I don't even think people would mind if he just said he was doing it because they offered him a lot of money. You don't have to go on this crusade about why Saudi Arabia is better than America. Like, watch this.
We're going to Riyadh. The House of Saud is paying us hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of us millions, not me, but they're paying millions of dollars to comedians. We're taking the money. How about that?
Anyways, let's talk about today's sponsor. Now, I don't believe if you're trying to play a trading engine up course, personally, the suck already, it's already assist customers, personalized AI, all play money back. Tell me, are they supposed to be funny? /Go Scum. Now look at these comedians. Tell me, are they supposed to be funny? You see what I mean? What the happened to stand-up comedy? Why the are these people so popular despite being so unfunny? It's because they have the second pillar of the Rogan empire, the podcast.
Yep.
The podcast is essential to a stand-up comedian these days. If you don't have one, you may as well work a stupid pedestrian job like teacher or firefighter, you dumbass who worked hard. I have to talk into a microphone a couple times a week. Try doing my job. Now, these podcasts are labeled as comedy, so the first thing you will notice is that they are completely devoid of any humor. The purpose of a comedy podcast is not to be funny. It's to be a modern day philosopher. The last line of defense against the woke mob. Look at the way these guys talk about stand-up.
How many of us are there? Let's talk about that.
True that.
Is there even 1,000 of us on Earth?
Let's talk about that. How many of us are there? How many amazing comedians? Oh, he's so funny. He's so sincere too. He actually means it too. We're so how many are there? What, you mean good ones? Oh, big up Joe.
No.
Probably not, if you want to be honest.
Yes.
Like a real headliner, how many of us?
Yeah.
There might be 500 of us
Yes.
on Earth.
On Earth.
There's 1 million doctors in America alone.
Yeah.
How many comics are there? Real ones.
Real ones.
Guys can go up there and light a room on fire.
Yes.
Maybe a few hundred. It's hard to get there.
Yeah.
Now, forgive me if I don't think the court jesters should be treated like the fearless knights. Rogan was easily the biggest of these podcasts, and despite what people say, he was good enough at interviewing that it made for some decent entertainment. I mean, I used to be a fan, especially like 2017 era Joe Rogan. It wasn't a comedy podcast, but they did talk about comedy a lot. So naturally, because it did so well back in the day, it meant every other comedian had to rip him off. Every shitbox stand-up had to have their own podcast, where they didn't do comedy, might I add, but they talked about doing comedy. If you wanted to be a successful comedian back in the day, you had to have a podcast. Also, you have to invite other comedians on your podcast to talk about stand-up comedy so that you can go on their podcast and talk about stand-up comedy so that you both can go on Joe Rogan and talk about stand-up despite not even doing stand-up anymore because you're too busy doing podcasts where you talk about doing stand-up. Exactly. We have reached hyper reality in comedy podcasts. There is no bearing to stand-up comedy anymore, and the comedic element is that there is no comedy. You see what I mean when I question what the even is comedy anymore? Seeing a dude go on stage and rant about his own personal politics and talking with the intellectual depth of a 14-year-old. This is the state we're in. There are a few good comedy podcasts out there, but for every secret podcast or come town, you have an avalanche of guys talking about stand-up and what's wrong with the world. So why did Joe Rogan get so big? You see, Joe Rogan does interviews. This style worked really well when he was blowing up because it was extremely unique. I know we see it all the time now, but back then, celebrity interviews were very short, contrived, and inauthentic. They basically told you nothing about the person, only just that their new movie was coming out. With this long style podcast interview, you really got to know who the person was. This works great when you're interviewing big celebrities or interesting people, but it doesn't really make sense when you're interviewing other comedians who have their own podcast. I know Bert Kreischer is an alcoholic. Great. Now give me 400 episodes of that. What's interesting is that there are
Hey yo, big up point and shoot in the stream chat. Big up point and shoot in the stream chat. Wagwan G. Wagwan to the king. Big up point and shoot.
Some funny moments in Joe's podcast. Some. However, what you'll notice is that most of these are from before the pandemic. Now, I have a theory about Joe Rogan in the pandemic. This is just my theory, but Joe Rogan died from COVID, and this is a clone standing in for him. Because pre-2020 Joe Rogan is so different from post-2020.
By the way, point and shoot, we're waiting. We are waiting. We are on the edge of our seats. We are waiting for the fucking Lush, the Lush video. I'm sure you've seen Lush get baptized. We're waiting for the summary of the Lush baptism. It's been probably one of the most wildest months in Lush's life. It's been up and down. It's been topsy-turvy. It's been entertaining as fuck. We are waiting for the great analysis from Point and Shoot regarding Lush's fucking baptism. It's been fucking brilliant. I need to see all of it in exhaustive detail. Big up Lush. We need it. We fucking need it.
20 Joe Rogan. And this might be due to a number of reasons, but the biggest one is COVID. The most obvious example is the horse dewormer incident. Despite all my criticisms of Rogan, I think he was done dirty here by a media smear campaign. Now, before you leave your Reddit comment, hear me out. This was around the time Joe Rogan was becoming super popular and mainstream media was becoming less and less trusted. Joe Rogan goes on record and says he got the virus and treated it with ivermectin. Now, I'm not a virologist, so I don't know if this works for sure, but what I do know is that when CNN claimed Joe Rogan was taking horse dewormer, that was insane. Just in my limited research back then and now, while ivermectin is available in a form for animals, it also has been used on humans to treat numerous ailments. Labeling it as Joe Rogan took horse dewormer is so slimy and dishonest, it's hard not to side with Joe, even if you think he's a moron for treating the virus the way he did. If we're talking pure intellectual honesty, their goal was to mislead, despite Joe proving that he took the version made for humans. He also had the main medical expert from CNN on, and he basically had to admit that they did him dirty. It's my opinion that they wanted to get at him for a while, and this was their opportunity to pounce and create some sort of smear campaign. I think being misrepresented would upset most people. The weird thing is that there are...
To be fair, this made him into a COVID freak. This like that attempt to cancel him with the fucking horse dewormer thing, that's why he doesn't shout up about COVID. That might be the reason why he doesn't shout up about COVID. That might be the reason why we constantly get conversations about the lockdown, about fucking Fauci, about efficacy, about this, about that, because of CNN. CNN are the reason why.
Are so many things you could criticize Joe Rogan for, like how he set off a bomb in San Antonio during the recording of Burn the Boats.
One guy pulls out a gun, boom, shoots that guy, bang, shoots that guy, boom, blows his own brains out, leaves one guy alive going, ah! Flying all the way to Mars, strapped in next to 3 dead dudes.
The point of this is that I see it as a turning point for Joe Rogan. He used to be a guy who openly had any conversation, but since he was done dirty by the mainstream media, he started going in direct opposition to them. Now, I get it. Obviously, he wasn't going to be sympathetic to those people. Furthermore, I think Joe Rogan was always a counterculture guy, but as the Overton window shifted, he went from fighting against the mainstream to becoming the mainstream. Alternative media...
Rogan is mainstream media. Mainstream media is Rogan.
Is bigger than it has ever been in history, and Joe Rogan is the face of it. Unfortunately, because Joe is just one guy, he is the trusted source. He is the face. This leaves him way more open to manipulation than something like CNN or Fox News. Not because those aren't corrupted, but it's because they are. Everyone knows CNN and Fox News are biased, bought and paid for. Joe Rogan isn't bought and paid for, at least not that we know of. But when he has the head of the FBI, government employees, and other people,
he might not be bought and paid for, but he's influenced. He might not be bought and paid for, but he is heavily influenced by his gaggle of oligarchs. His gang of billionaires that he seems to orbit around him.
It's hard to believe that they're just going on because they're big fans of him. This inadvertently sides the biggest name in alternative media and the comedy prophet with the State Department. This would have killed a 2016 Joe Rogan listener to hear him become an extension of government propaganda. And he knows it. Like when he had Kash Patel, FBI director, on his podcast, and he basically said, yeah, Epstein? That's nothing. It's boring anyway. How convenient. Now, Joe realized this was bullshit, and he kind of said so on his podcast. So the White House sent a lady to talk to him about aliens, which was the most obvious, let him play with the new toys so he doesn't talk about Epstein move ever. This is the world we live in. A bad comedian has the State Department trying to distract him from a global file ring because they think he's too influential. We have reached the point beyond parody. What's interesting is how close Joe has gotten to Peter Thiel, who the other day tried to invite Clavicula to a fucking party. You hear about that? Allegedly, Peter Thiel tried to invite fucking Clav to a fucking party. He didn't go in the end, but Jesus Christ, mate. Number one, Jesus Christ. Number two, Peter Thiel is fucking plugged in, innit? Peter Thiel is fucking plugged in. Associated with Epstein, loves Israel, and is the CEO of Palantir, you know, the government mass surveillance big brother company. Oh, and by the way, in his free time, he loves the Antichrist. I am not kidding. Despite this being something the old Joe Rogan and, in my opinion, anyone would be shitting their pants over. I mean, who wants mass China-style surveillance unless you like shock your dog? I mean, that doesn't seem like a good idea. Joe is extremely defensive of Peter Thiel and Palantir.
You want to get to him, you got to go through me.
Which is weird because he usually can't shut up about conspiracy theories. Exactly. But when a literal Antichrist-loving tech billionaire has a company that makes military technology named after the evil wizard orb from Lord of the Rings that lets you spy on anyone, well, honestly, I don't know. I'm just friends with him. Theo Von was talking about how sketchy Palantir was on his podcast, and Joe just played dumb. But when he talked about how billionaire pedos are being protected right now, which, you know, come on, I think we all know that, Joe pushed back. He pushed back more on Theo Von than Kash Patel, which is insane to me. It looked like there was a brief moment where Joe realized what was going on, and either he changed his mind or he doesn't care. I think the reason is he's experiencing some sort of cognitive dissonance right now. He thinks free speech is absolute. That was what their whole comedy crusade was about, was the censoring of speech in comedy spheres. He thinks government overreach is bad and has been insanely critical of out-of-touch elites. Now he's having those people on his podcast and running defense for them. A clear contradiction to his core beliefs. So now he has to rationalize it in his head why Palantir actually isn't scary and how billionaires are just normal good people who have everyone's best interests at heart. Because he knows his words and his behavior contradict. And when anyone calls him out, he uses a tactic to essentially absolve himself. Joe Rogan has this thing where he goes, look, I'm an idiot, when he wants to deflect criticism of himself. This allows him to not have to back up any of his opinions. And I agree, he's an idiot, because from an outsider's perspective, the State Department played him like a fiddle. The question is, how aware of this is he? Clearly they took advantage of his platform, but now is Joe aware of that and complicit, or just stupid? I just find it strange how much he chills with,
I think he's aware and complicit,
Epstein associate Peter Thiel, and then suddenly doesn't care about Epstein. Joe used to be the one banging the drum for the everyman. He was the dude who would talk about this stuff unapologetically, call out bullshit. That stuff pissed him off, which is fine. Culture war stuff admittedly pisses me off too, and I'm sure it does the same to you guys. But with Joe, the difference here is kind of interesting. A kitty litter box put in a kindergarten that was proven to be a hoax? This is insane. We should be up in arms. But all of a sudden, it's revealed that the global elites are trafficking children to an island in the Caribbean to have eyes wide shut parties, have direct influence on global politics, and are funding mass surveillance companies with pretty damning evidence coming out every single day. And Joe is like, well, okay, let's back up here for a sec. It's one thing to not call this out. I don't think he has that obligation necessarily, but he seemingly endorses it. Why though? Why get involved in any of this? Joe Rogan is...
It makes money!
Supposed to be a comedian. Why is he talking to billionaires who want to practice radical acceleration?
He loves money!
Well, what's obvious about Joe is that he wants to be taken very seriously, which is why he constantly inflates the value of being a stand-up comedian, as well as all of his friends. Unfortunately for Joe, his stand-up is not very good, but his podcast is serious. So talking to such influential people, regardless of if they're trying to manipulate you, gives you some legitimate authority.
You will respect my authority.
And money.
Joe might even be aware his stand-up sucks. I don't know about that, but I'm sure he's seen the Elephant Graveyard video, which, by the way, is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
But where he does get legitimate respect is in his podcast. While he isn't a bad interviewer, he did get very lucky with his podcast. With the timing, he was kind of the first guy to pioneer this style, and it's not a very hard job. I think the reason Joe does this is he wants to be seen as a hard worker, which is why he does ice baths and saunas all the time, even though he doesn't have to. All his buddies have the same mindset too. This grind set, I work so hard, you gotta get off your ass, motivational speaker, when all they do is talk about doing stand-up. Not
exactly, and some of them cancel their patrons because it's too much work.
even doing stand-up, like I mentioned. Judging on this video, you might think that there are no good comedians and comedy podcasts out there anymore. That's not true. There are plenty of funny dudes out there, even in the mainstream. Tim Dillon, Shane Gillis, Stavros Halkias. But what do these guys have that Joe and his buffoons don't? Humility. These guys aren't pretending they're the saviors of free speech. They're just funny dudes who tell jokes and want to make people laugh. I look at someone like Stav, who, much like Joe, got successful doing podcasting whilst also being a stand-up comedian. Stand-up wasn't what blew him up to massive success. It was podcasting. Stav understands that.
I mean, not to say a podcast. This is my problem because I do believe in art and I do like to think about it, but what I've made my living off of is the two lowest forms of art in existence, which is stand-up and podcasting respectively. Podcasting is the one thing where I'm like, wow, it's the one thing that's maybe like, I guess stand-up's art because this is fucking bullshit. You know what I mean?
Assuming both of these are art, podcasting is probably the lowest form of art there is, with stand-up comedy not being much higher. Joe Rogan has taken the opposite approach. It's actually hard being a podcaster. Therefore, being a stand-up comedian is basically a Herculean undertaking.
Exactly,
and what I've found is the more serious a comedian takes themselves, the more unlikable they become. And this is true for anyone who makes low art. Podcasters, comedians, YouTubers,
DJs,
Twitch streamers.
DJs.
In all reality, these aren't hard jobs. Let's be honest. And if your comedy podcast revolves around you talking about how hard you work and how hard you grind, people aren't gonna like you. Like Joe Rogan could just stop doing kettlebells, ice baths, and saunas tomorrow, and nothing would change. Your average person can't stop working. The idea that being a podcaster, YouTuber, streamer is harder than working a regular job is perpetrated by people who've never had a real job or haven't worked one in like 20 years. And just from a personal story, not too long ago, I went and worked as a PA on set for a commercial. And let me tell you, being a YouTuber is 10 times easier than having to do that 4 or 5 times a week. I met some of the most hardworking dudes on these sets who are not being fairly compensated. And they're just normal dudes. Joe Rogan talking to comics is different because they aren't like normal people. They can talk about comedy to each other. That's why Joe Rogan and his buddies think comedians' brains work differently. Exactly. Not realizing you can say this literally about any profession. Military members can relate to other military members. You're not special because of your career. It's just a part of you. The best entertainers are those who can laugh at themselves. That's why Stav's podcast, Come Town, was so successful and why people love Stav. The butt of the entire podcast was how degenerate and awful they are. This isn't even true for just comedians. Look at streamers who can't ever be the butt of a joke versus a streamer who's always the butt of their own jokes and laughs at themselves. The way these comics suck up to Rogan and kiss his ass is so pathetic because a real comic wouldn't be afraid to make fun of Rogan. Not in a mean way, but even in a ribbing way that most people do.
I'm obviously not a fucking bomb expert, but I talked to one.
You should see your act.
I'm sure these comedy assassins would be able to figure this out for themselves, but apparently not. How are guys that have been doing stand-up for 20 years somehow getting worse? I understand you might get worse at podcasting after doing it for so long, like if you ran out of funny stories or whatever, but the answer is simple. Because they like the idea of doing stand-up and calling themselves a comedian, but they don't actually want to put in the work to do stand-up. Take Tony Hinchcliffe.
That's a great point. I mentioned that before. And also the money thing. I think the money motivator is also true. They make way more money. I think like stand-up takes effort. Even if you're going to phone it in, getting on stage, getting dressed to go on stage, traveling, that takes way more effort than just, sitting at your desk and recording a pod. So obviously it makes more money doing that. So it's harder for them, I think, to sit down and actually write jokes when they can go through the motions and keep doing it. Plus, I also wonder, do the fans maybe enable them? Because if the stand-up fans demanded that they actually write jokes, demanded more, they would do it. But a lot of the fans that go and watch these guys perform are also fans of the pod. They don't really care if they're funny. They just want to see their favorite podcasts up close and personal. So it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. Like, loads of things are happening at the same time. But overall, what he's saying is true. They just don't bother to write jokes, essentially.
Allegedly, he's at his best when he's just making fun of autistic people that come on his show. Yep. But have you ever tried to watch any of his stand-up comedy? Like I said, his special is so bad, he scrubbed the thing from the internet. Yet despite this, he's seen as one of the success stories in Rogan's Austin comedy sphere. So did Joe Rogan save comedy from wokeness? It depends on if you think he was responsible for the relaxing of speech rules and the disappearance of cancel culture, which I don't think he was. I personally think it was just a natural culture shift to something more moderate, away from censorship. He was pushing for this, but with any cultural progression, it's likely people are gonna make a few mistakes before they get it right. Cancel culture was born out of actors and actresses getting abused in Hollywood by powerful dudes. It's just a side effect. It had to cancel Shane Gillis, which might have been the best thing to happen to him, but it feels like we've hit a point now where we can call out predatory stuff without ruining someone's career because they did an Asian accent. I think it's just a natural cultural progression. I also think it's funny how guys like Dave Chappelle complain about free speech in America and how it's dying, but will happily go to Saudi Arabia to do comedy for a blood money dictatorship who executes people for attempting to speak out against them. They literally weren't allowed to make jokes about the government or royal family. In America, making fun of the government has been done so much, it's almost hack at this point. These dudes have no principles because they'll sell out to billionaires who want to censor speech. They don't care about freedom of speech because they're just like the social justice warriors. I love free speech until it's speech my handlers tell me is bad. So no, Joe Rogan didn't save comedy from wokeness. But did he ruin comedy? Yeah, probably.
100%.
It's almost like a pervert wizard waved a magic spell in the whole world. Like, with a wave of this wand, you can walk through the women's locker room with a hard cock, and anybody who complains is a Nazi. Abracadabra! And it just worked! And anybody who complains is a Nazi. Abracadabra! And it just worked!
It's so bad, isn't it? He's so fucking bad. What? What did you say, sir? What the fuck does that mean? Oh my god, is that meant to be funny? Like, what? Oh my god. Big up Joe. Big up Joe, man. Big up Joe.